Imagine waking up each morning feeling clear and purposeful, like you see opportunities instead of threats. And even when a challenging situation appears, you feel that familiar flutter of fear, but instead of freezing or retreating, you take a deep breath and move forward anyway. Not because you don't feel afraid, but because you have developed a relationship with fear where it no longer controls your choices. That level of emotional freedom is what allows you to create an authentic life on your own terms. But right now, fear might be running the show. That's exactly why you have landed on this video. You know the tightness in your chest when you consider making a big change, the racing thoughts at 3 a.m., listing all the ways things could go wrong, and the constant what ifs that keep you playing small and safe. And over time, this fear doesn't just stop you from taking specific actions, it basically shapes your entire identity into someone who plays it safe rather than someone who pursues what truly matters to them. And the painful truth, well, it is that the regret of paths not taken eventually becomes way more painful than any temporary discomfort of growth. And here's what nobody tells you about fear, that people who appear fearless aren't actually less afraid than you are. They are simply better at being afraid. They have learned that fear isn't a wall blocking your path, it's actually a compass pointing directly towards your growth edge. And today, I am sharing three evidence based approaches to transform your relationship with fear. And these aren't quick motivational fixes or empty, feel the fear and do it anyway cliche. Well, they are practical tools drawn from neuroscience and psychology that works with your brain's natural functioning rather than against it. I use these exact approaches to leave my secure corporate job and build something meaningful on my own terms, even while feeling absolutely terrified. And I'll show you how to apply them in your own life starting today. Hi, I'm Supriya Rajavat, and welcome to the very first episode of Empowered Supriya. This channel is about real transformation, the kind that happens from the inside out. I became an AVP at the age of 28, probably one of the youngest in my company's history. On paper, I had everything I ever wanted, with financial security, professional respect, and a clear path up the corporate ladder. But something wasn't right. I felt suffocated by the rigid structures, the long commutes just to show my face at the office, and the constant need to prioritize company demands over my own well being and family needs. I always dreamt of creating something of my own, work that gave me freedom and made a meaningful impact in the world. But whenever I considered making that change, fear would flood my entire system. My heart will race, my mind will spin with worst case scenarios, and I retreat back to what I felt safe, the corporate job. And the turning point came on my birthday last year. I decided that day would mark not just another year of life, but a fresh start entirely. I had my resignation letter ready, but that morning I just sat in my car staring at it. My heart was racing with fear. My stomach felt like it was flipping. I kept thinking of reasons to wait. Not because I loved my job, I didn't. I was miserable. But something inside me was screaming, danger, uncharted territory. That's when it hit me. This fear wasn't weakness. My brain couldn't tell the difference between leaving a toxic job and walking into real danger. It was like having a loyal guard dog that barks at both dangerous intruders and friendly visitors. It's just doing its job, trying to keep you safe. This realization was profound. I wasn't broken for feeling afraid. My brain was working perfectly. It was just prioritizing safety over happiness. But I also knew that I couldn't let this protective mechanism make my life decisions for me. That insight began my journey of understanding fear on a deeper level, not just personally, but from a scientific perspective. And what I discovered, changed everything for me, and I hope it will work for you too, as it has worked for many of my clients. Before diving into solutions, we need to understand what's actually happening in your brain and body when you feel afraid of taking a significant step in your life. Fear is primarily a survival mechanism, an emotional and physiological response designed to protect you from danger. So, when your brain detects a potential threat, a small almond shaped structure called the amygdala acts like an alarm system, triggering a cascade of changes in your body. You can just see physical symptoms like heart rate increasing, breathing becoming shallow, but internally, stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol flood your system. Blood flows away from your digestive system towards your muscle, and your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical thinking part of your brain, becomes less active. This is the famous fight, flight, or freeze response, and it has served our ancestors incredibly well when facing physical dangers. But here's what makes modern life challenging. This same alarm system activates when you consider leaving your comfort zone, starting something new, or putting yourself in situations where you might be judged or rejected. For instance, public speaking, changing your career, starting a new business. Your brain treats the uncertainty of a career change, for instance, with the same urgency as a physical threat. And what makes fear particularly difficult is how convincing it feels. Like when you are in a fear state, your brain literally functions differently. With reduced prefrontal cortex activity, it's harder to think clearly or creatively. Your perception narrows to focus only on potential threats. Your brain becomes more sensitive to negative information and dismissive of positive possibilities. This isn't a weakness or a character flaw. Let me tell you this. It's how your brain is designed to function when it perceives danger. And the reason I'm sharing scientific evidences or scientific research is for you to understand what goes on in your brain to be able to deal with this problem well. Understanding this is crucial because it explains why traditional advices like just push through it or don't overthink it really works. You can't simply, think your way out of a physiological response that evolved over millions of years. Instead, you need approaches that work with your brain's natural functioning rather than against it. That's exactly what we will explore next. Solution number one, which is the physiological regulation. Since fear begins as a physiological response, the first and the most immediate approach is learning to regulate your nervous system when it is in an activated state. So, when you feel that familiar fear response, racing heart, tight chest, shallow breathing, whatever is your fear response, your first step is to shift from fight or flight to a calmer state where you can think clearly again. And the most powerful tool for this is deliberate breathing, specifically with an extended exhale. Now, this directly activates the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's rest and digest mode that counteracts stress. It's a simple pattern called the 3-3-6 technique, in which you inhale for a count of 3, hold for a count of 3, and then exhale for a count of 6. And you repeat this pattern for at least 5 to 10 times till you start feeling calm. The extended exhale is key because it stimulates the vagus nerve, which directly activates your parasympathetic system. So, when I was considering leaving my corporate job, I would practice this breathing whenever fear arose, like before important conversations, while reviewing my finances, when imagining worst case scenarios. It didn't eliminate fear, but it created enough calm that I could think clearly rather than react from panic. Another powerful regulator is physical movement. Even a brief walk or gentle stretching helps process the stress hormones your body produces during fear. Another effective approach is temperature change. You must be thinking this is crazy, but it does help a lot. Splashing cold water on your face or taking a warm shower can rapidly shift your physiological state. Try this and you will see the difference. But let me emphasize this, that these techniques aren't eliminating fear. They are about creating enough physiological balance that you can choose your response to fear rather than, being driven by it automatically. So try this right now. Take 3 breaths with a 3-3-6 pattern and notice how even this brief practice creates a subtle shift in your state. This is a tool that you can use anywhere, anytime before difficult conversations, when you're making important decisions, or whenever you notice your fear arising. Now, solution number two, which is fear exposure. You can understand from the name. While regulating your physiology creates immediate relief, lasting change comes through gradually building your tolerance for fear inducing situations. Now, this approach is based on exposure therapy principles from psychology and is one of the most evidence based methods for working with fear. So rather than avoiding what scares you or forcing yourself to terrifying leaps, you deliberately expose yourself to small, manageable doses of fear inducing situations, gradually building your capacity over time. Here's how to create what I call a fear ladder. Yeah, we'll have a fear ladder. So identify something meaningful that fear has been preventing you from doing. Break it down into like 8 to 10 actionable steps. Small steps from least frightening to most frightening. Start with step that feels challenging but doable. That means your step number one. Okay. Now stay with that step using your regulation techniques until the fear decreases. To the next step only when you're ready. So I'll give you an example. When I was terrified of public speaking, but knew it would be important for my business or my job or anything in my life, my ladder looked like this. Number one, I recorded myself speaking for 1 minute while no one was watching. Number two, share the recording with one trusted friend. Number three, speak for 2 minutes in front of two supportive friends. Number four, join a small supportive speaking group. Number five, speak for 5 minutes at that speaking group. And so on, gradually increasing the challenge level. So each step built my confidence and showed my nervous system that I could survive the discomfort of fear. But the key is that I never took steps that completely overwhelmed my system. So, for situations where fear is preventing you from even starting, I use the 10-minute rule. Commit to just 10 minutes of a fear inducing activity. Tell yourself, I'll just do this for 10 minutes and then I can stop if I want to. This works because it makes the task feel manageable, time bound, it gets you past the initial fear spike, and it builds evidence that you can handle discomfort. Often, once started, you will continue beyond the 10 minutes. I use this technique when building my first website, creating content, and reaching out to potential clients. Those first 10 minutes were always the hardest, but they broke the paralysis that fear was causing. So, I ask you this, what manageable step could you take this week to begin building your fear tolerance? Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to expand your capacity to take meaningful action alongside it. And with that, we come to the third solution, which is fear reframing. The third approach works at the cognitive level, changing how you interpret and relate to fear itself. So, what if fear isn't a stop sign, but a growth signal? Most of us have been taught to see fear as a stop sign, an indication that we are doing something wrong or dangerous. But what if fear is actually a signal of growth, opportunity? What if it's not a warning to stop, but information about what matters to you? This reframing completely transformed my relationship with fear. So instead of seeing it as an enemy to overcome, I began to see it as a natural companion on my meaningful journey. Um, Here's a practice I call as fear observation. So all the practices are named as fear something. So when you notice fear arising, pause and acknowledge its presence. Seriously do that. Observe the physical sensations without judgment, name them specifically. For instance, I notice my heart is beating faster, or I am feeling tightness in my chest. Remind yourself this is fear. It's a normal response to uncertainty. It doesn't need to control my choices. You know what I'm doing with this? This mindfulness based approach helps create space between you and the fear. You are no longer completely identified with it, you are the awareness observing the fear. Another powerful perspective that helped me is recognizing that fear isn't a stop sign, like I mentioned before, it's a checkpoint. You don't need to turn around when you encounter it. You simply need to pause, check in, and then, continue with the journey. In those moments when fear is particularly loud, try this. Place your hand on your heart, take a deep breath, and say directly to your fear, I hear you. I know you're trying to protect me, but I've got this. This acknowledgement creates a completely different relationship with fear than trying to fight or ignore it. Still not sufficient? Okay, I'm going to share one more powerful reframing which comes through asking different questions when fear appears. So instead of, how can I get rid of this fear? Try asking this. What does this fear tell me about what matters to me? Fear often points to values. How would I approach the situation if I knew fear was a natural part of growth? What would I say to a friend experiencing this exact fear? We are compassionate with our friends, but when it comes to us, we kind of critically judge ourselves. So think from a perspective of what you will tell a friend who is experiencing the same fear. And when I felt afraid about leaving financial security to start my business, this reframing helped me recognize that my fear was highlighting how much I valued providing for my family. That was useful information, not a reason to stop, but something to acknowledge and plan for thoughtfully. A final reframing technique that helped me tremendously was connecting with others who had navigated similar fears. Having honest conversations about their experiences helped normalize my fear and provided perspective that my fear based thinking couldn't access. So, when I was terrified about financial instability, conversations with other entrepreneurs who had navigated similar transitions helped me see that fear was a normal part of their journey too. And you know how validating this could be? They found ways to manage risk while still moving forward. The sense of purpose they gained was worth the temporary discomfort. These approaches don't aim to eliminate fear, that's neither possible nor desirable. Instead, they help you develop a different relationship with fear. So it becomes a normal part of your growth journey rather than a barrier to it. Now, let me share how these three approaches worked together in my own journey of leaving corporate life to start my business. As I mentioned, I stayed in my corporate job much longer than I wanted to because of fear. So, when I finally decided to make that change, I used all the three approaches in combination. First, I practiced physiological regulation daily, like daily. Before making important calls, reviewing my finances, or having conversation about my plans, I will use 336 breathing technique to ensure I was making decisions from a regulated state rather than panic state. Second, I created a gradual exposure plan. So instead of quitting with no plan, I broke the transition into manageable steps. Researching different business models while still employed, taking one course to build relevant skills, working with one client on the weekend, building a small financial runway, and then reducing my hours before actually leaving. Each step built my confidence and provided evidence that I would handle the challenges really well. Third, I continuously reframe my fear. So when the voice of panic would say you're making a huge mistake, I'll pause and ask what this fear was telling me about what mattered. Or when it pointed to legitimate concerns that I could address thoughtfully rather than reasons to abandon my entire vision. Now, did this eliminate fear completely? Absolutely not. I still felt afraid throughout the process. I still feel afraid even today on certain things. But these approaches gave me the capacity meaningful to take meaningful actions alongside the fear rather than being paralyzed by it. The most profound shift wasn't that I stopped feeling afraid, it was that I stopped feeling fear as evidence that I was doing something wrong. I began to recognize it as a natural companion on any journey of growth and change. So, as we wrap up this first episode, I want to emphasize a key insight that changed everything for me. The most successful people aren't those who never feel afraid. They're the ones who have learned to take meaningful actions even when fear is present. So I invite you to start with just one approach that resonated most strongly with you. In the comments, I will love to hear three things from you. Number one, which approach resonated most with you? Number two, what specific fear has been holding you back? And number three, what small steps you will take this week. In our next episode, we'll explore how to overcome self doubt, the cognitive companion to fear that often appears once you have started taking action towards your goals. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe to join me on this journey of empowerment. Until next time, I'm Supriya Rajawat, and this is Empower with Supriya. Thank you.